Greetings, folks. Iolair here. Today's replay features myself in the Tier 7 German cruiser, the Yorck. Now, my regular viewers know, as well as my division mates, that I love playing the ship. In fact, I have a number of other Yorck replays on the channel, and I'll leave links to those replays in the description below. This ship has very good gun systems, and I think we're going to see examples of that throughout the battle here. Now, this is a Tier 9 domination match on Trap. There are no aircraft carriers involved, and I am divisioned with Jimmy Jazz, who is in the Scharnhorst. Now, my build in the Yorck is more or less the same as what I've historically run, with one important change. I now take the Vigilance skill, which is a skill I have historically not taken on the German cruisers because they already have the superior hydro. But I have found as of late there are a number of circumstances where the stacking of Vigilance with the German hydro has provided some really excellent early detection of torpedoes, not only for myself, but for my allies nearby as I land a Citadel hit on the Gorizia. And I'll talk a little bit more about the AP shills here in a moment. Vigilance, again, has not been something that I've been really enthusiastic about taking historically on the German cruisers, but my mind has quickly started to change, and I've now been taking this on quite a few of my German cruisers. So this match is going to be, I think, a good demonstration of how to play a flank that is a weak flank for your team against a strong flank for opponent, especially as a cruiser. And I'm going to send out another AP shell salvo here. I'm going to land, I think, 2 more Citadels, or maybe it's not this one. Maybe it's the next one. Yeah, this match is going to be about how I approach dealing with being on a weak flank. There are going to be some places where I make some mistakes that I'll try to point out. Again, I do land a couple of Citadels on the Gorizia. He's going to get finished off, I think, by Jimmy Jazz in the Scharnhorst here. Yeah. So I've moved over to Alpha with a bunch of my allies, but we're going to end up finding out that the opponents have sent a very substantial number. In fact, I think literally half of their team to the Alpha cap. And that is going to put us in a position where we are going to be constantly in a defensive posture. In fact, they are eventually going to push through that cap, and we will have to sort of bleed away or kite away, and that is a reflection of the title of this video, and is going to be a key mechanic or practice that both myself and a number of other people on my team are going to follow as we try to defend against the weak flank. Now, our team has taken Bravo largely without issue. I think we're going to lose our Mahan at Bravo here fairly quickly. I'm not sure if he was open gunboating or what, but we are going to lose him. Or maybe it's the Mahan that's in Charlie, excuse me, not the one in Bravo. And you can see my position. I'm right on the south edge of the map. I'm going to end up having to get turned around here fairly quickly because I'm going to end up running into the map border, excuse me. But you can see, in fact, there I just mentioned that the Mahan at Charlie was in fact taken out. There was the Chapayev that was at Charlie, and presumably he had radar or hydro to sort of flesh out the Mahan, and they're going to end up taking Charlie for their team here fairly quickly. So you can see there are 2 opposing destroyers, 2 cruisers, and 3 battleships at Alpha. So this is clearly their strong flank. We are not too badly represented. In fact, we actually have 2 destroyers that are sort of on the east flank of the opposition here at Alpha, and they could provide a lot of, well, not only good spotting, but also be able to provide sort of perpendicular torpedo drops against the opponents, which is not a bad thing. The Yugumo obviously can do that quite easily because he has 10-kilometer or 12-kilometer torpedoes, depending upon his build. And the Mahan, again, depending upon his build, either has 6.4 or 9.2-kilometer torpedoes. And so they actually could be in a fairly good position to be able to threaten the large body of capital ships that the opposition has on the north side of Alpha. Now, I was very lucky there that I didn't take more damage from the Lyon than he did. Now, I did anticipate his shot, but I was too broadside and I turned in, but he did aim up and end up aiming high. So that was kind of a mistake on my part that I allowed him to fire on me with that much broadside, and I didn't turn to try to avoid the shot well enough. But as luck would have it, he didn't aim very well anyway. Now we do end up losing our Moss. I'm sorry, I kept mentioning Mahan. It was a Moss that was on the east side or the north side of Alpha, trying to torpedo the opponents that are on the north side of Alpha. But the opponents have a clear handle on Alpha. But one thing that's kind of happened, which is kind of interesting at Alpha, is that they're kind of bottled in here. They're in a crossfire situation that they're having to defend against, even though that they have the cap. They have ships like myself that are on the sort of the east side or southeast side of Alpha, and there are ships, including Jimmy Jazz, that are more north of us that are able to put in sort of crossfire on these opponents and sort of keep them isolated toward Alpha, which is not a bad strategy when you're dealing with the strong flank in order to keep them from pushing harder than they are. Now, the opponents had taken Charlie, as I mentioned earlier, but our allies have now just taken out a couple of the opponents at Charlie. We do lose our Atlanta, but our Atlanta had set the Jean Bar on fire and gotten the Jean Bar down. So now the opponents have solely their Mahan at Charlie as well as the Chapayev. Now our Alsace has moved into Charlie on the very north side at Bravo 8. He just finished off the Mahan. I'm not sure why the Mahan would have been detected. He didn't really have a need to be detected by the Alsace. So now the Alsace and the Iowa that are at Charlie will be able to eventually finish off the Chapayev. One thing that's a little bit of a problem for our team, however, now is our Iowa is significantly out of position. In where he is in the northeast part of the map, he's in no position to fire on anything. Our Alsace is taking the cap and is now going to be able to get the Chapayev down eventually. The other problem that we had is we have a Brindisi that just went down, and he was significantly overextended. He was located on the northeast side of Alpha, and he just basically was completely overexposed to the opponents that are in and around Alpha. Now Jimmy Jazz is in Bravo, looking to defend that cap. We do lose our Yugamo again, likely due to overextension. The Saint Louis that is on the west side of Bravo is now putting fire on Jimmy Jazz, and Jimmy Jazz is having to peel away here, try to get into some cover. That Saint Louis, I think, is going to be quite challenging for him. Now, coming back to my situation, I've just taken a bad salvo from the Musashi. The Musashi obviously doesn't care about my angling. I was trying to keep an eye on everybody who had me detected, but this is another place where I've made a mistake. I'm one of very few ships that they can actually see at Alpha, and I'm probably the closest of those targets. And so that's why I've had as many as 3 opponents targeting me. I know at least right now the only one that had been targeting me is one of the destroyers, and I'm reasonably safe from taking fire from him. But again, the 2 biggest risks right now I have are the Musashi and the Lyon that have now moved into the cap and are pushing through Alpha. And this is where we have to employ a very common strategy, or what I would recommend players do when they're dealing with a weak flank. Generally, you don't want to leave a flank open. You don't want to allow opponents to be able to move through the flank completely unopposed, because they'll simply flank you and then put a lot of your teammates into crossfire situations. So at least keep the flank spotted and try to delay them as best you can. And so the practice I'm going to be following here, and our Nagato is going to be following, and our Mogami, is a practice that I think a lot of players are familiar with, but maybe less familiar to some, which is kiting. And basically what this is you are angled away from your opponents, and you're using your throttle and your speed and your angling to throw off their shots, because it's very difficult for a lot of players to be able to hit ships that are kiting. It's very difficult to sort of judge their speed, direction, and so on. And this is a practice that is employed by a lot of players and is a very good practice as I unfortunately shoot through the superstructure of my Nagato there. But this is a very common practice as I get another fire on the Musashi to be able to uh, put fire on opponents, but do it in a way that isn't 100% safe, like firing from concealment from behind an island, but is the next best thing. The other advantage that I have here is, and this is a reflection of the York, and the Algerie has this benefit as well, is that they have excellent range. The Shores has this benefit as well, although the Shores isn't quite as durable as the York or the Algerie. But those ships have excellent range and ballistics. And I can fire and reliably hit these opponents that are 15 kilometers away or more. And again, you saw there that the Gneisenau fired on me, and I was able to avoid his shots. Again, he's having some difficulty judging my position and speed and direction. Uh, but this is something that these long-range artillery cruisers like the York can employ very effectively to be able to put fire on opponents and avoid taking damage. We do detect the low health Mahan that was at Alpha again. This shot is very poorly placed. So I'm going to end up firing quite far behind him. Fortunately, our Mogami is right on the keeping an eye on things, and he finishes off the Mahan. Now, the other thing that our team has done here from the Alpha Cap, even though the opponents have pushed through, is we have 3 ships that are spread out. We have myself, the Nagato, and the Mogami. And because we're spread out this way, we're forcing the opponents to be in a crossfire. They can't all concentrate their shots in one direction and focus all of us at the same time, or get shots on many of us at the same time. So they have to make their choices as to where they're going to place their guns. And that, again, can be a very effective way to help defend a weak flank. Now, coming back to the general tactical situation, our allies had lost Bravo to the Friesland. But Jimmy Jazz and in the Scharnhorst, as well as our Iowa and our Alsace, after having finished off the Chapayev, have finished off the Friesland and are now taking Bravo back. The Saint Louis that I mentioned earlier, that has kind of been a thorn in Jimmy Jazz's side. In fact, we just got a quick glimpse of Jimmy Jazz there. His health was quite low. That Saint Louis had been quite challenging for our flank to be able to get Bravo back. Fortunately, Jimmy Jazz is able to finish off the cruiser, and now we can get Bravo without further challenge. Now, I've been spending the last several minutes kiting away from the opponents. But now what's happened is the Gneisenau, which is the only ship that I could shoot at, has gone behind an island, so I can't fire on him, and he's squarely front and center with Jimmy Jazz, our Iowa, and our Alsace. He's not going to last too much longer. So I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to start moving back down south to put fire on the Lyon, and in particular, the Musashi. So the Lyon is going to be the next one that's actually going to end up trying to move towards the cap. As you can see, the Gneisenau is just about to go down. And then our team will be dealing with just 2 opponents. Now, one other observation I'd like to make here, and I'm not trying to be critical of the people that are playing these ships, but in my opinion, the Lyon player and the Musashi player, they kind of squandered their health for their team. So in particular, the Musashi is a top-tier battleship in this game. And a big part of a battleship's role is to absorb damage for the team. And given how healthy he is, his team did not benefit from his ability to absorb damage and to repair that damage through the repair party consumable. And only now is he getting closer to the engagements and is going to end up taking any significant fire. He ended up playing very far from range for much of the game and let his allies take a lot of the damage for the team, and so now it's just down to himself and the Lyon. In fact, the Lyon is the only one attempting to move into a cap to play anything toward the objective. Unfortunately we do lose our Iowa, but the Lyon is the only one that's actually trying to move into the cap to even play the objective. Now, I have moved towards the Musashi, And one of the things that I've did here is I wanted to be on the side where he would not have his guns pointed toward me. So I'm able to put at this time shots on him that he will not return to me. Watch this AP salvo, 12,000. So for you cruiser players out there, when you have a broadside battleship, don't hesitate to use your AP. Especially heavy cruisers in particular, getting up into the superstructure and on the deck, you can do substantial damage. So I did over 17,000 in 2 salvos of AP on the Musashi. I'm going to return back to HE here because he started to turn away from me, and I switched back to AP here and to get another shot. Now he has come back to pay attention to me. I've slowed and turned in here. I am going to take one over pen, but again, he doesn't care about my angling, so I have to be very, now that I have his attention, I have to be very careful here. There may not be much I can do. I may simply, and he may end up finishing me off, but he's taken so much damage now as in a crossfire situation, and I'm going to switch back to HE here because he's angling back in towards me. He is going to get, I think, one more salvo off here. I'm going to slow and turn back in, and he is going to get another pen on me, but no citadels. And with the next salvo that I'm going to fire out, I'm going to finish off the Musashi, and we're going to end up winning the game. You also notice that I earned high caliber. So again, this is a reflection that even a lowly tier 7 cruiser in a tier 9 match can have a substantial impact for a game. So I think this is the highest damage I've ever had in the Yorck in all the years that I've been playing her. This was definitely a very good match for obviously myself, and for our team. Jimmy Jazz also did very well. So certainly a good match, hopefully a good demonstration of the capabilities of not only the ship, but some practices to follow when you're on a weak flank. So I hope you enjoyed the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.